How we going, folks? Welcome back to the Nightmare Cabin, and we are finally doing it. We are doing the Ozzy Osbourne retrospective. Long delayed. If this is your first time watching the channel, I did do a Black Sabbath retrospective. I did it in two parts. I did the Ozzy years, and then did everything from Heaven and Hell up until present day. A few years ago now, and I did intend to follow it up with an Aussie retrospective, and then I still want to do a Dio retrospective, which I am going to get to be doing now. But yeah, just things got in the way, and I just never got round to it. But obviously now is the perfect time. Obviously we've had the very sad passing of Ozzy Osbourne. You know, I don't think it was a shock for many people, but it was sad when it did finally happen. He's been in poor health for a good couple of years, but you can't. I don't think anyone could wish for a better way for their life to end. You know, he was massively successful. He was surrounded by loved ones, and think about it: how many people get to attend their own funeral? He did that big show at the end. That was pulled off. The original Black Sabbath lineup closed it, so everything came full circle. Every box was ticked. Everything was tied up, and he could go proud. And what a legacy he's left behind. And it was great to see everyone come out and show the love for him. So yeah, now that the dust has settled, I think I feel good now to go through the back catalogue. I was listening to him a lot whilst I was on holiday, but I was just listening to songs, and obviously family were in the car and everything, so it was all sort of, random songs. But it was only in the last week that I've actually sat down and listened to the entire catalogue, album by album, one by one, all the way through it. And there's so much gold here, and it's a strong catalogue. And he's had a lot of different lineups and worked with a load of great musicians. But I do think the most surprising thing about it, listening to it all now, is the deep cuts. It's the non-obvious songs. It's the non-singles, that are, worth reassessing and going through. So yeah, without any further ado, I suppose we'll get into it. So yeah, we'll have a brief recap. Obviously, with Black Sabbath, things were just going crazy. Everyone sort of points the finger at each other. He was drinking too much. He was taking too much drugs. Whatever happened, it seemed like something was going to happen at some point, and one of them was going to go, and it just happened to be Ozzy. And Ozzy gets picked up by Sharon, who was Don Arden's daughter. Don Arden was the manager of Black Sabbath. And yeah, in 1980, Black Sabbath recruit Ronnie James Dio and release Heaven and Hell. And also in 1980, we get Blizzard of Oz. Blizzard of Oz is originally the band was called Blizzard of Oz. And we had Randy Rhoads on guitar, a young guitar prodigy that they managed to discover. He was in Cheap Trick beforehand. Although he didn't release, Cheap Trick obviously went on to release albums and become really successful, but Randy was only ever on their demos. You had Lee Kerslake on drums, who was also in Uriah Heep, and Bob Daisley on bass, and pretty much wrote everything. Again, depends on whose interview you watch or read, and I can't. It's too much to get into now. But yeah, the debut album. What can you say about this? It's brilliant. It's. I'm sure I said it at the Black Sabbath retrospective, but the split needed to happen, and both benefited from it. So the last two albums, with the original lineup, Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, they were messes. I know people kind of retrospectively sort of reassess them, and they've got their redeeming features, and yeah, whatever. You know, the fact of the matter is they didn't carry on with that sound, did they? It wasn't working. It can. There's some nice accidents on there, and you can reassess them and say that they're interesting albums and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is, those albums were failed experiments. But what we got with the split was Heaven and Hell by Sabbath and Blizzard of Oz with Ozzy, and both of those albums are classics. Both mutually benefited from the split. So, yeah, opening with the fantastic I Don't Know. I mean, every song on there is a, I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance. You've got D, which is just a little instrumental by Randy Rhoads, which he dedicated to his mum. Suicide Solution, Mr. Crowley. All classics, but this is where it gets good. You've got No Bone Movies. Great song. Then you've got the sort of epic, which is Revelation, Mother Earth. When Ozzy said, like, going forward, he would always want to have like a bit of an epic track on an album. And then it's a bit of a builder up. It's a song that builds up and goes into a big climax. No Bond Movies as well was a really good fun song. And then finishing with Steal Away the Night, another great chorus on that. It's just infectious, and you just can't help but sing along to it. I think No Bond Movies was about Pong, if I remember rightly. But yeah, it is. I'm just looking at it now. Is it? Yeah. But great song nonetheless. But yeah, he hits the ground running basically, and comes out with a classic. And how do you follow up a classic? With another one, Diary of a Madman. This one is slightly expanded, but in terms of sound, but just like with Sabbath, they kind of give a 1-2 punch with Heaven and Hell and Mob Rolls. And it seems on this one the lineup is settled in. They've obviously been playing loads, and yeah, they've just developed as in the songwriting department as well. I'm going to try and find that and use that. If I can find that in a decent size, that's going to be the thumbnail. And again, classic after classic. I mean, Over the Mountain, Flying High Again. Obviously, we had the epic on the first album with Revelation. Well, this closes with the epic, The Diary of the Madman. Is it SATO? Really good riff on that one. Believer, another great track. Yeah, I mean, it's just two. It's a 1-2 punch. Which one's better? Who cares? It's irrelevant. They're both awesome albums. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. I mean, Randy Rhoads, he was the guitarist that inspired a million other guitarists. When has a guitarist ever said anything bad about Randy Rhoads? He was this particular lineup. There was magic. It was great choruses, great riffs, instantly recognisable songs. And listen to Diary of a Madman again, like in the earphones. You forget how brilliant that song is, and especially the climax with all the orchestral, the choir and everything. It's brilliant, and yeah, obviously, so he kicks off with two classics. Then tragedy ensues with the death of Randy Rhoads, with the plane crash. Just absolutely tragic what happened there. And but we don't get this till later on, but I'm going to cover it now. So you get the tribute, the live album, which is recorded on. Is this one concert or is it a big collection of them? I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it was either way, this is one of the best live albums in rock as far as I'm concerned. It's got a perfect set list, and a perfect mishmash of these two albums. I think there's a couple of Sabbath ones on the end, isn't there? Yeah, it does Paranoid and Children. Oh yeah, Iron Man, Children of the Grave, and Paranoid. But yeah, you can argue all day about what the greatest live album is, but I wouldn't do a list without including that. It's excellent. This doesn't get released until later on, but I just want to cover this era of the band in one go. So yeah, 2 classic albums and a classic live album. So I will touch on that later on when we come to it. But right, moving on. Like I said earlier, how do you follow up a classic? You follow up it with another classic. And how do you replace a classic, a fucking monumental guitar player? Well, you find another one. And Ozzy found another one in J.G. Lee. And then in 1983, released Bark at the Moon. So J.G. Lee is the new guitarist. Bob Daisley is still on board. And this time we also have Tommy Aldridge on drums. Phenomenal drummer. Currently in Whitesnake. If Whitesnake are still going, I'm not quite sure. But that's his latest thing that he's been in. But he's Tommy Aldridge has drummed for everyone. And fantastic drummer. And Don Airey on keyboards, who is currently the keyboard player in Deep Purple. And if you look on his thing, what album hasn't he played on, basically? And it's the same with Tommy Aldridge. Who hasn't he drummed for? But yeah, great lineup and another great album. It marks the new era. I mean, Bark at the Moon, brilliant. You're No Different to Me. A great song, kind of pointing the finger back at the people that were pointing the finger to Ozzy at the time. And I saw a little bit of it when he died, actually. You know, some people just never get the hint and insist on being holier than thou. Sorry, and you know, it's a case of get the log out of your own eye before you point out the speck in your brother's. You know, it's a great answer to it, and it's still hands up now. It's a sad song, but I love the dark keyboards on it. But Rock and Roll Rebel is another one. So Tired is quite a, it sounds, it's always sounded funny to me. It sounds like an Elton John song or a Billy Joel song, but it's Ozzy loved his ballads as much as anything else. But Waiting for Darkness, though, is the deep cut on this. The riff on that, fucking awesome. And yeah, obviously there's the controversy as well where J.G. Lee got conned out of his royalties. Does it still say it now that basically everything was written by Ozzy? I'm not sure, but yeah, too much to go into here. But yeah, another great album. We're still on the winning streak. And then 1986, we get the underrated Ultimate Sin. I don't know. Oh no. Before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Am I getting ahead of myself? Let's quickly look. We've got another live album. Where's that? Because around this time, we get Speak of the Devil, but I can't quite remember. Right, 1982. I think I've got ahead of myself. Bear with me 1 minute while I look at this. Yeah, right. So before Bark at the Moon, he releases Speak of the Devil. I did have this on vinyl, and when you open it up, it had really cool imagery. Let's see if it's in here. Oh, I think you had that. For some stupid reason, I sold it, is the short story, and I don't know why, but because I'm stupid, basically. But was J.G. Lee on this as well? Sure he was. Speak of the Devil. I haven't done my homework, have I? Here we go. Speak of the Devil. Right, so basically what went on was... No, this was Brad Gillis on guitar. I don't know why... Or maybe this was before J.G. Lee come on board. I'm not sure. But basically, there's a bit of a conspiracy. Black Sabbath were releasing a live album, and I think they quickly threw this together. Although it is a live album, I don't think it's at a gig. I think it's actually in a studio where he basically just did loads of Black Sabbath. So it's an Ozzy Osbourne live album, but it's only Black Sabbath songs. And they quickly rushed it out to derail the Black Sabbath live album with Dio. I don't know if Ozzy was being that petty at the time, but great album nonetheless. And yeah, I don't know if anyone actually picked a side. I don't know why you can't like both. And I got both, so whatever. So yeah, we've covered 2 live albums already, but yeah. So this was before Bark at the Moon. Just edit that in your head. So we go Bark at the Moon, then we get the very underrated Ultimate Sin. Right, so we're back on track now, and it's really annoying because I really like that artwork, and I know you get it inside, but I want it. I can't flip it over and damage the book, but trying to get hold of a copy where that is the actual, like the full-sized artwork, it's just impossible. They keep getting these dumb... I don't know whose idea it was to release all the albums like that. It's so... Because you had other ones as well where it was just all the artwork was just in that square, so it was all like a collection, but it looks crap. But anyway. Now, a lot of people don't like this album. And a lot of others, this is their favourite album. It divides opinion. It's known as the glam album. Yeah, if you're one of these metalers that wants everything to sound like Celtic Frost and you want to go on the internet and say I'm more metal than you, then yeah, everyone hates this album. But, I mean, the imagery of this time of the band, the hairstyles and the clothes, yeah, all right, I'll grant you that. But musically, there's no different to what we've got so far. And who cares? It's catchy. It's, the songs speak for themselves. The riffs are there, the melodies are there. Jakey Lee is on fine form. And some of Ozzy's best songs are on this. And that's really all there is to it. I've got to go through the lineup. So we've got Jakey Lee back on guitar. Paul Sozan on bass. And Randy Castillo on drums. Where do I know Randy Castillo from? Oh, he would go on... Oh, he's going to stay on for the next couple of albums, funnily enough, Randy Costello. That's where I remembered him from. I was getting him confused with someone else. But anyway, yeah. There's not a song on here I don't like, really. Ultimate Sin's a great opener. Thank God for the Bomb. Killer of Giants. Phenomenal song. Shot in the Dark. It's an album that's just effortless to listen to. It just plays itself. And, yeah, rightly so. Every album so far is considered a classic. But I think this is it as well, Jakey Lee leaves the band, and that's when Tribute gets released. So, up until this point, this is what many consider the golden period of Ozzy. I think it continues, but... If you are new to Ozzy, the first 4 albums, you can't go wrong. Time goes on. I'm skipping over a load of stuff, but I'm sticking to the music here, otherwise I'll be here all day. But Ozzy then discovers another new prodigy. So in 1988, he comes across Zakk Wylde. Bob Daisley comes back on for bass and songwriting. Randy Castillo's still on drums. And we've got John Sinclair on keyboards. It's a bit late to get into who produced what, really, isn't it? Because I've not covered it so far. But it's, Keith Olsen produced it, along with Roy Thomas Baker. But yeah, in 1988, we get another underrated album, actually. No Rest for the Wicked. It's one of the more, from what I gather... It's probably one of the lesser popular albums by Ozzy, but there's some, songs like Crazy Babies, I could do without that. But with a song like Fire in the Sky and Miracle Man, it more than makes up for it. I would probably say this is the first album in this run so far that isn't a classic. I'd put those first 4 albums down as classics. And this is kind of like there's a couple of duffs on here, and there's a couple of songs that just aren't bad, but they're kind of just in one ear out the other sort of thing. But The good stuff on it is really good. Breaking All the Rules is a great song. I love Fire in the Sky. But yeah, it's good for the collection and worth getting. But it's the next album for me is when Zakk Wylde and this particular lineup really come into their own. And that's, to me, is No More Tears. When was this released? 1992? Was it 92? 1991, sorry. This, to me, is Ozzy's masterpiece. I would say Diary of a Madman and Blizzard of Oz, the Randy Rhoads albums. And then this. I think that's the trilogy. Although, I don't mind, it's not, No Rest for the Wicked isn't a complete dud. But, yeah, maybe I would say, for me, the golden era period is the first 6 albums, not the first 4. But, yeah, this was his later day masterpiece, and it was in the perfect time as well. The amount of people that slag off the Black Album but then love this album, this one seems to get a pass for some reason, and I don't know why. It's just a perfect heavy metal album for 1991 when it was released, really. It's got perfect songs, the perfect sound, the perfect production. Starting off with Mr. Tinkle Train, kind of Alice Cooper-y. Him and Alice Cooper, I think, were becoming like sort of rivals at this time. But I love I Don't Want to Change the World. I love Desire. I think that song's really heavy. It's really good live. But then you've got beautiful songs like Mama, I'm Coming Home. You've got dark, atmospheric songs like Hellraiser and the epic title track, No More Tears. Time After Time, another great song. Road to Nowhere, again, so we've got Mama Coming Home and Road to Nowhere, 2 beautiful songs. But there isn't a bad song on this. I think this is an album where he struck gold. And this was, I think, the peak of Ozzy as a live artist. It was I think this was like the biggest of his career. He was just firing all cylinders, really. Unfortunately, I think the madness in his life with his alcoholism and whatnot was at its worst as well. But hey, the 90s, we didn't know how good we had it. So it gets confusing now, because didn't he do the retirement tour? This is his first retirement tour, because there was no more tours. Then he came back and did the Retirement Sucks tour. So what was that? That was 1991, and then for the longest gap we've had so far, 1995 was the next album, which is another underrated one. Actually, this album tends to get a lot of flack. I would say I originally was like, no, this album's really underrated. I don't know why people hate it so much. But whilst re-listening to it this week, I must admit, the album, when you listen to it in one go, it's just under an hour long. It can be a bit of a slog, I must say. It is a bit of a heavy lift, because I do think it is quite heavy on slower songs. Like, all of the songs are between 5 and 6 minutes long, and I think they all kind of take their time to build up and get where they're going. And I think a couple of shorter, faster songs could have broke things up a little bit. And this was around the time, though, when everyone was putting out really long albums, where I think LPs had finally been shelved and everyone was sticking to CDs. And I think they went, well, we can fit more music on a CD, so let's fill the CD up. And I think a lot of albums suffered around this time, so maybe that had something to do with it. But you had obviously Metallica and Pantera. Metal had got sort of heavier at this time as well. And he opens with Perry Mason, which is actually a really heavy song for Ozzy standards. When it opens like da 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 da, and then that bam bam bam. But it's a really heavy riff and a really underrated song. I love Perry Mason. This was around the time, when I was getting into Ozzy. I got into Sabbath at a young age, but when I was like buying my own records and getting into music myself, and then sort of appreciating Ozzy and Sabbath for myself. this was the latest album because I came into metal and everything like when Ozfest was in its, it was really kicking off. So he hadn't done a new album for a while, and he was going back and forth between solo and Sabbath. So this was the latest album for a while, and it's you can't you got heavier tracks like Perry Mason, but "See You on the Other Side" is one of my favourite songs across the board. That is a beautiful, emotional song. And All Day Late Tonight ain't a bad closer. There's Thunder Underground as well. It's a good album, and it's an underrated album, actually, but I'll stick with it. But yeah, I would say there's great songs on here, but yeah, listening to it all in one go can get a bit, maybe I was just listening to all the albums at this point and I was just getting a bit, But yeah, this is the underrated one, and I think it's worth a reappraisal if you are one of the people that don't like it. Yeah, Osmosis. Now this is when Ozfest kicks off. Famously, Ozzy Osbourne. Sharon applies for Ozzy to play Lollapalooza, which was the festival being run by Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros. And he said no. He wanted the festival to be a launching pad for new artists, and Ozzy was, they took it as in he was old and past it. And I'm going to give Perry the benefit of the doubt. I don't think Perry meant you're old and past it, but he wanted it to be a launching pad for up and coming. I don't know, but so yeah, Sharon said we'll do our own festival. Obviously, as well, you had the Black Sabbath reunion, and they put out that live album. But then they were doing Ozfest, and this is where Ozzy kind of relaunches himself, really, and kind of sits himself nicely on top of the metal pile, really, because now everyone's coming to play his festival that he is. So he's kind of, new bands are coming up. Ozfest is what launched Korn. It's what launched Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Snot. All that new metal was coming up, but they were Cold Chamber. They were all playing, and obviously Slayer and Pantera were playing it, but they were already well established. But yeah, so you kind of got this nice middle ground where the heavyweights were playing the main stage, and they kept relevant, but Ozzy's at the top. And then you've got the second stage where all the new up-and-coming bands are being launched. So they're all being launched, and all these new metal bands are coming up, but they're coming up through Ozzy. And Ozzy's just kept himself on top of that pecking order brilliantly. And he does it brilliantly as well. He's going to do an Ozzy Osbourne set and then close with a Black Sabbath set. So he's doing 2 sets a night. Then you've got your Panteras, your Slayers, your Megadeths, whoever it is. And then the second stage where everyone else is using it as their launch pad. And there's classic sets from Korn, Slipknot, so on and so forth, which has led us to where we are today. So there's that. Then he relaunches himself again as a reality star. So there was MTV Cribs, where celebrities basically showed you around their house. The Osbournes did that, and that episode went down so well that it then developed into the show The Osbournes. So Ozzy sort of relaunches himself with the festival, but then relaunches himself as a reality star, which, it is what it is. But I would say Ozzy, as much as he is known and loved today, it's almost like his music is sort of the last thing he's known for. And people forget just what a great musician he was, and people I don't think, on the whole, don't really appreciate what a good artist and what a good singer he is. And it's a bit like Elvis. He become, you can get a cartoon Elvis hanging from the mirror in your car. It's he's become a character. He's become a plushie, an action figure, and a persona. The bat eating Sharon, and it's like the music again. Just like Elvis, Elvis became a cartoon character where he's the most famous singer in the world, but his music seems to be the last thing he's actually known for. That's how Ozzy kind of became, and it was a bit tragic in my eyes. But whatever. We are where we are. So we've gone through the Randy Rhoads period. We've gone through the Jakey Lee period. We are in the Zakk Wylde period, but we now begin the Osbournes period. And yeah, so we get 2001 Down to Earth. So Osmosis came out in 1995. And yeah, Down to Earth comes out 6 years later, 2001. And this is launched coinciding with the Osbournes. So the first series of the Osbournes, Ozzy is promoting and touring this album. And this is where we come to the period where I don't think Ozzy really develops his sound anymore. This is now just Ozzy being Ozzy, and we're kind of in radio rock territory. It's Ozzy being Ozzy, but you know what you expect, and I think people know what they want from Ozzy as well. It's a bit like with someone like Alice Cooper or Aerosmith. People are going to see Ozzy now for the hits, and the new material isn't exactly bad, but you're getting minimal songs in the live set, and it's not so much an event like Iron Maiden, for example, where the new album is a continuation of a musical journey. Yeah, it's basically Ozzy doing Ozzy, but not necessarily a bad thing. There's good stuff to come. So yeah, so Down to Earth, you get the opening track, Gets Me Through, which is pretty good, pretty heavy. Then you get a ballad like Dreamer, which is basically Ozzy channeling his John Lennon. He's trying to be the Beatles and has a good crack at it. It's not a bad song, especially in retrospective, really. But then you got like a song like Junkie. It's all the albums going forward now, they're good while they're on. You enjoy them while they're on, but there's not really a lot of classic undeniable material. There's no real songs on here that's like, no, you have to play that. There's songs on Blizzard of Oz he has to play. There's songs on No More Tears that he has to play. No one's going to be like throwing a fit because he didn't play anything off Down to Earth. But it's not to say it's a bad album. So there's some gems on here. It's but yeah, is what it is. It's Down to Earth. Oh, interestingly though, let's go for the lineup. So you've got Zakk Wylde, Robert Trujillo, I can never pronounce his name, bass player for Metallica, you know him. He went on to play in Metallica after this, and Mike Bordin from, I've got to say it, Robert Trujillo. I'm just going to say it, right. Leave it at that. Mike Baldwin for Faith No More on drums. Just going to quick drink, one sec. Next up, a box set comes out, and we get a disc in that box set, but it was released later on its own, and we get Undercover. Now, there's a lot to say about this. So, basically, it's a covers album. It's a stopgap release. You know what stopgaps are released are like. Some people put out live albums. Some people put out B-side albums. Some people re-record old albums. We did get that a little bit, didn't we? Should we get into it? Let's get into it. So, they reissued Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, and they got Rob Trujillo and Mike Baldwin to re-record the bass and the drums. Very petty, very unnecessary. Pretty much rejected by the fans, rightfully so. And yeah, that kind of they got reissued again with Bob Daisley and Lee. Sorry, I forget his surname. Back on drums. Yeah, stupid thing to have done. And yeah, a bit of an embarrassment, really. Should never have happened, and it was rectified. I bet those editions are collector's items now, though, thinking of it. But anyway, right. And then some people put out cover albums, and cover albums have mixed results. But this is one of the better ones, actually. He does great renditions of classic songs. Rocky Mountain Way. That's Joe Walsh, I believe. In My Life by John Lennon. Fire by, what's his name? Arthur Brown. Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. You get Changes as well. That's another one as well. Changes, the Black Sabbath song. Ozzy re-recorded that with Kelly as a duet. Kelly Osbourne was trying to launch herself with a pop career at the time, obviously off the back of the Osbournes. I mean, it went to number one. It didn't do any harm. But what else we got on here? 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is Kim Crimson, All the Young Dudes. That was Mott the Hoople, but written by David Bowie. Anyway, Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. Yeah, great songs. Great renditions of classic rocks, like, you know, the formation of rock and roll. So yeah, Ozzy's going through his songbook and giving the old classics a go, and it's a really good, enjoyable listen. Actually, this one gets overlooked by many people, but the lineup is what I want to talk about on this album. So it's a good, enjoyable album, but on it you've got, let's go through it, Jerry Cantrell on guitar, which I didn't know. I didn't know until I was doing this episode. Yeah, I've had the album for ages, but I never really took much notice of it. I was listening to it and just went, yeah, you know, this would be pretty cool. But then thought nothing more of it. And it wasn't until I was actually reading the, you know, lineups and credits and all that, yeah, Jerry Cantrell was on this. And Mike Baldwin is back on drums. And Chris Wise on bass. Who has played for Ace Frehley, The Cult, Joe Perry's. So he's been about. But yeah, I can't believe Jerry Cantrell was the guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne, and I think he did a little bit. I'm not sure if he did touring with him or anything. But how good an album would Ozzy Osbourne and Jerry Cantrell have made? Like, there's a parallel universe that I wouldn't mind exploring. Like, you know, as much as I've got respect for Zakk Wylde, and yeah, he's done some great albums. You know, No More Tears is a classic, and you know, there's good stuff on Down to Earth, and there's good stuff to come. But yeah, I wouldn't have minded a Jerry Cantrell Ozzy Osbourne album, and some of his riffs as well. Jerry Cantrell, you know, it would have been a unique album, and it would have been a new stylistic change. So yeah, I'd love to have seen that happen. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of that. What do you think of Jerry Cantrell? But because he had his solo stuff going on as well, and then eventually obviously had some change. I mean, it wouldn't have been long lived, but I would have liked to have seen where that had gone. Anyway, so 2007 we get Black Rain. Now, pretty much what I said about Down to Earth is kind of Ozzy being Ozzy, and it's, you know, kind of safe, kind of very well produced, safe sort of radio rock. That's kind of applies here as well, but I think it's a better album than Down to Earth, and I think there's some underrated tracks on there. Obviously, you know, Not Going Away, I Don't Want to Stop is a good single. Black Rain, though, the title track is really good, really interesting. Then you've got obviously Lay Your World on Me, a love song to Sharon, because Sharon was suffering with cancer at the time. You know, it's impossible to not think of Sharon whilst listening to it, but it's a moving song nonetheless. Countdown's Begun is a pretty good song. But yeah, no, this one I think is really enjoyable. A bit heavier than what we get around this period, but yeah, underrated album, worth looking into. I've got to say, look, none of this is bad. I just think there's different priorities. If you're new to Ozzy Osbourne, like what to buy first, it's more of a case. It's worth getting all of it, but we'll go into it at the end of get this first and then get that last sort of thing. So, right, 2000 and where are we? 2007. So we're on Black Rain. And then 4 years later, we get Scream. We've got a new lineup on this one as well now. So Zakk, basically Ozzy amicably parts ways with Zakk Wylde. I think at this point, well, at the time it was basically there's nothing wrong with Zakk. I just want to try something different. Zach's got Black Label Society, and my albums sound like Black Label Society. He's got his own sound now, and I want to, just refresh my sound and try some new talent. And it was all amicable at the time. Although it did come out later that apparently Zach was struggling to stay sober at the time, and apparently Zach's wife apparently said to Sharon, "Look, him going back out on tour, I'm worried if he's gonna, stumble." So they kind of did it that way. Who knows? But Scream is a special album for me. I remember at the time, this was the year my son was born. I remember this pretty much being the soundtrack to the summer at the time. Me and my wife went to see Ozzy Osbourne on this tour. One of the first times we went out since he was like, when you have a baby, and then you have that first night out, when you get a babysitter and your mum looks after the baby, but you're still in your own routine, and you're just like, mum's just like, just leave, just go. It's going to be fine. I've done this before. And then you're relieved to be out, but at the same time, you can't wait to go home, But, we saw Ozzy Osbourne on this tour. It was Ozfest, and it was at the O2 Arena. And, I was just, this was in the car that summer. So I kind of just got used to these songs. And like I say, it's very, very clean, very radio rocky. But for the best reasons as well, sometimes it was just a good soundtrack to the summer, really. Let It Die, I think, is a great opener. Let Me Hear You Scream, a single. Again, it's very typical, but when something works, it works. You got Deep Soul Sucker is a good song. I love the track Life Won't Wait. I think Ozzy's getting better. Well, he's always been good at them, but I think he shines better in this period with his sort of more I don't want to say ballad. Is it a ballad? I don't know. But it's a nice breezy summery song with a serious content, really. Life Won't Wait. But I don't know. It's just a great song. But leave it at that. But pretty much all of it. Crucify, Fearless, Time. Every song on this is they're all well put together, And I remember listening to Alice Cooper's latest album at the time as well. It's all perfectly produced, all really good songs. It's not a demanding album to listen to, and it's like, what more do you want from him at this point, But again, I think this is one of the better later day albums, and I like every song on it, and that's worth a reassessment if you're into that, later day Ozzy. Check it out, Scream. And Gus G, he was a phenomenal guitarist, but I don't think he was used to his full potential, to be honest. I think he was great live when he was playing all the Jakey Lee and the Randy Rhoads songs, but I don't think he did much writing on this album, It was a bit of a weird one. So he had a new great guitarist, but he didn't use him to his full potential. Right, carrying on. So at this point, Ozzy goes back with Sabbath again, and this time they actually do an album. 13. I cover that on the Black Sabbath retrospective, so you can go and watch that. I'm not getting into it now. But they do the 13 tour, a world tour that goes on for ages. And then straight off the back of that, they then announce the farewell tour. And then that goes on for ages. So we don't actually get an Ozzy Osbourne album for a while. And now we get into the Andrew Watt period of the band and the last period for Ozzy. So Ordinary Man came out in 2020. And so I don't know what Ozzy was. He starts working with Andrew Watt. Now, if you look into Andrew Watt, he it's a two, isn't there? There's Andrew Watt and another guy, and they're the upcoming producers that the big wigs work with. I'm thinking there's another name but I can't remember who it is. I don't suppose it matters, does it? So, yeah, Andrew Watt has he works with he works with Lady Gaga and people like that, and he was in a band with Glenn Hughes as well. So I suppose he knows his rock, but yeah, this guy comes out of nowhere and he's the and it this you know. This certainly launched him because he wanted to work with him again, and then I remember Ozzy saying in an interview, "I'd like to do another album with Andrew," but the guy's basically just he's fully booked now, and he would then go on to do the Rolling Stones' latest album. The Rolling Stones hadn't done an album in an age. I think the last album was like 2003, although they did put out this Blue and Lonesome, but this is just basically a bunch of blues covers. And I think it was more or less. I think they went to Abbey Road and just it was basically recorded live in the studio. But that's not original material. But the last album of original material was 2003, and then was it last year or the year before? The Rolling Stones put out an album of new material, and that was produced by Andrew Watt. Oh, and then he did an album with Elton John. So big names are using him, and big names are obviously happy to work with him and are happy with the results. So I'm not, throwing shade on the guy, but couldn't you have done an album with Andy Sneap? Couldn't you have, you're fucking Ozzy Osbourne. You discovered Randy Rhoads, Jakey Lee, Zakk Wylde. Zakk Wylde is, people can't even imagine metal without him, and that was you that discovered him. Couldn't you have discovered a new guy and got a fucking metal producer and you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, it's as I said at this point in the career, it becomes quite radio. Like, it becomes a bit safe, a bit radio friendly. In the 80s we had the Satanic Panic and Ozzy Osbourne. Before that we had Black Sabbath and they were scary. Now we've got Loose Women. We've got GMTV Ozzy. But yeah, is it bad? Oh, it's all right, Straight to Hell ain't a bad opener. You've got the duet with Elton John, which is, kind of nice, I suppose. Under the Graveyard weren't a bad song. But, again, Andrew Watt is a producer that's making... It's like if he was a film director, he'd be doing Marvel films. He's doing big productions for big audiences, and I think, do you know what I mean? You see where I'm going with this? He's got. This is the point as well. He does a song with Post Malone. So there's the Take What You Want, where basically it's just Ozzy singing the chorus with Ozzy and Travis Scott mumbling to each other. But then you've got a song called It's a Raid with Post Malone, and that's actually really fun. So it's like, it's like mixed reactions. But, yeah, it's what it is, It's all right. But, yeah. And then we get the same thing. Now, Patient Number 9 came out. This is, to be the last Ozzy Osbourne album, and, it's... that came out in 2022. Now, Ordinary Man, Ozzy was meant to be doing a tour, an actual farewell tour. It got cancelled once already because Ozzy came down with pneumonia. And then it got cancelled again because of lockdowns, so on and so forth, and then it just got cancelled altogether. But during that time, he managed to record another album. I did review this album when it came out, and my opinion of it hasn't really changed. I think I've slightly softened to it. I listened to it a couple of times. I've listened to all these albums over the last week or so, and I actually meant to record this video the other day, but because I didn't get around to it, I thought, well, I might as well listen to this again. Again, on paper, this should be an awesome album. It's got everyone on it. It's got Zakk Wylde on it. It's got Tony Iommi on it. It's got Jeff Beck on it. Everyone plays on this album, but it's like they cancel each other out rather than blend, I do really like Parasite though. That is that is a great song, and I love the chorus. I just it's I do really like Parasite. Patient number 9 ain't bad, but it's a bit like Ozzy by numbers again. Patient number 9 could easily have been an Alice Cooper song as well. Let me think. Nothing feels. Yeah, you got Eric Clapton on here. One of Those Days ain't a bad song. The two Tony Iommi songs on this are good. So No Escape From Now and Degradation Blues are pretty good. This is the annoying thing with these two albums. None of it's bad, but I feel like I'm being sold an algorithm. You know, I feel like Andrew Watt is one of these guys where he can adjust to whoever he's working with. But so, right, you're Ozzy Osbourne, you're a metal guy. Right, cool, let's make a metal album. But you need to be a metaler to make a metal album. Do you know what I mean? Like that's my problem with him. You know, yeah, great, you're working with Lady Gaga, you're working, you know, I'm not saying the guy's bad at what he does, but some things can only be made by some people, you know? And yeah, he would have been doing well working with the Stones. I mean, on that Rolling Stones album, I looked through it. He's actually got writing credits on 3 of the songs of that album. So the guy's done well. You know, you've got writing credits on a Rolling Stones album. You are made for life. So, but you should be a metal producer. You know, it's when you look on a great metal album and you look at the producer and look at the thing, you get a load of other metal albums. You get Andrew Watt, yeah. Oh, he's worked with Ozzy Osbourne. Cool. Who else? Rolling Stones. Oh, okay. Elton John. Okay. Lady Gaga. You know, it's just like, yeah. You know, I hope fucking no Metallica. They'll probably hire him next. But yeah, that's my problem here. Is the same problem I've got with Metallica. I wish I'd just get Andy Steep. You know. But then again, look at he's the guy went on to work with Elton John. I think Ozzy at this point probably had more musically in common with Elton John than he would have your average metaler, you know. So, like I say, none of it's bad, but none of it's kicking my arse either, you know. I will say one thing about this album. So I do really like the song Parasite. That I do like, but it closes with Dark Side Blues, which is very bluegrass sounding. It's got like that ding ding ding, you know, the old, it's kind of acoustic but got like a slide guitar going on, and Ozzy's playing harmonica on it, and Ozzy, you know, he played harmonica on The Wizard, the second track on Black Sabbath album. So especially now with what's happened, it is quite nice to see him closing with a blues song. So we start, Earth was a blues band. That first Black Sabbath album has got blues covers on it. Evil Woman and Wicked World, you know. Predominantly, you know, that album might have invented metal, but it invented metal by accident. Sabbath were very, you know, they were planted in blues. They were originally called, you know, Earth. And there's, you know, you can get Earth demos in the bootleg market, you know. So it was nice to see. It's nice now seeing him come full circle. He's started with blues, and he's finished with blues, and it's a pretty cool song in all fairness. So yeah, there's that. It's nice. So like I say, I'm just going to repeat myself, so I'm not going to go into it. So yeah, here we are. We got to the end of the Ozzy back catalogue, and what a journey it's been. Right, so just want to go through these as well. Live. So obviously Tribute, classic album, absolutely you need it. But Live and Loud on the No More Tears tour, phenomenal. Yeah, you've got to get this. This is Ozzy at his peak as a live performer. You've got this as well. This is on the Down to Earth tour. I do like the lineup on this. So this is, you've got Zakk Wylde on guitar, Rob Trujillo on bass. I'm guessing this is before he joined Metallica, and Mike Baldwin on drums. Really good set list on this as well, so that's worth a watch. And I found this as well. I ain't seen it in a while, but yeah, yeah, I remember at the time it being pretty good. God bless Ozzy Osbourne. Documentary on Ozzy, directed by Jack Osbourne, and yeah, worth a watch. And it seems to have been forgotten, so look out for that. Let's go through it then. What do you? So yeah, like I say, I think the absolute trilogy, like the definitive trilogy, you want Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, No More Tears. Do that first if you're new. I think that's the best. If you're new to Ozzy Osbourne, no, you can't go wrong with the first 6 albums. So definitely get the Randy Rhoads stuff. Then get the Jakey Lee stuff. I think Jakey Lee is underrated overall, especially Ultimate Sin. Definitely get No More Tears. I think... So yeah, so definitely get the first 6 albums. Then I think Osmosis and Scream are the next level down. So you've got your essential albums, then get these. Then I would say get Black Rain and Undercover. I think they're underrated as well. After that, don't not get it, but it's not essential. Get it, you know. These albums are okay, but they're not bad. None of it was bad. But get them last is basically it. And yeah, you know, here we are. We're at the end of it. I mean, what can you say? The legacy this guy's left behind will last forever, basically. And this is some of the best music ever recorded with Sabbath and as a solo artist. He was a lovable guy. Ozzy was just Ozzy. You know, I've never heard of someone meeting Ozzy and having a bad story. You know, people loved him because he was a genuine character. And throughout all the ages from 1970 or 1969 up until now, people who never even heard his music still loved him, you know, because he was a genuine article, and that's just such a rarity nowadays, you know. But he's got a classic catalogue left with us now that we can listen to over and over again throughout the ages. So as I said at the time, and I'll say it now, God bless Ozzy Osbourne. And yeah, go play him loud. Let me know in the comments what you think. What's your favourite album? What's underrated for you? What don't you like? Did you ever see Ozzy Osbourne live? Let me know about that. But yeah, crank it loud. Listen to Ozzy. Listen to Sabbath. These albums will never get old. And fuck Roger Waters.